Hi everyone, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? If you get anything out of anything on my channel, please like, share, and subscribe. If you haven't done so already, helps me get more of this information out. Not everything that I read do I personally believe. I take portions of what me resonates with. You might not resonate with the same things, but I think it's encouraging to read everything, even if it is of a false matrix, even if it is it's corrupted, it's infiltrated. They still have something in there that you might resonate with. That's why I read what I do. And if you get anything from my work, connect the dot, an epiphany, a download, a mushroom cloud moment, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links will be down at the bottom. And yes, I have moved. I have still working on the house, still putting things together. It's an arduous project, but we're at the end game now. I'm also working on We Not Me, that Rumble channel, and other things behind the scenes as a ninja. So, not getting paid. So all the things that I do is because of it's my mission, but any support, so I don't have to find a job, which I'm looking, see where that gets me. But here we are. Fun times. Today's book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. The last time read about the fun reptiles and birds and all that fun stuff. Oh my, but it gets even better. This chapter, flowers, plants, fruits, and trees. Oh my. Not really oh my, but yeah. So I'm going to take you through, I face you guys and here. We're going to get through this. And for those of you who are new to my channel, and sorry for the people that hear it every time I do a video, but I have to. See, I have a little thing right there, a little gap in my teeth. Okay, this whole thing is a bridge. It falls out at random. It's not in there. It falls out. There we go. So projecting certain words don't fly really well out of my mouth because these jiggle. Also, I'm dyslexic. So if you're following along with the book, some things just in my mind. So just be mindful. I'm not here to butcher anybody's language, words, or mispronounce anything that I can't help. So there's probably going to be a hell of a lot of words in this chapter that will not come out of my mouth properly. So I do apologize in advance. Why I don't do audiobooks or any of those other things that people keep suggesting I do is because I can't pronounce and project certain things properly. And I'm not here to embarrass myself, but this information needs to get out. Flowers, plants, fruits, and trees. The Yanni and phallus were worshipped by nearly all ancient peoples as appropriate symbols of God's creative power. The Garden of Eden, the Ark, the Gate of the Temple, the Veil of the Mysteries, the Vesica Pisces, or Oral Nimbus, and the Holy Grail are important Yonic symbols. The pyramid, the obelisk, the cone, the candle, the tower, the Celtic monolith, the spire, the campanelli, the maypole, and the sacred spear are symbolic of the phallus. In treating the subject of priarchic worship, Too many modern authors judge pagan standards by their own and wallow in the mere of self-created vulgarity. The Ecclesian Mysteries, the greatest of all the ancient secret societies, established one of the highest known standards of morality and ethics, and these criticizing their use of phallic symbols should ponder the trenchant words of King Edward III. Another language here. Quote, honi soti qui mal ye pence, end quote. Don't butcher me on the Latin, people. The obscene rites practiced by the later Bacchanalian, that name, and Dionysia were no more representative of the standards of purity originally upheld by the mysteries than the orgies occasionally occurring among the adherents of Christianity till the 18th century were representative of primitive Christianity. Sir William Hamilton, British minister of the court of Naples, declares that in 1780, Asnera, a community of Christians in Italy, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, worshipped with phallic ceremonies the pagan god Priapus under the name of Saint Cosmo. 2 essays on the worship of Priapus by Richard Payne Knight. Father, mother, and child constitute the natural trinity. The mysteries glorified the home as a supreme institution consisting of this trinity functioning as a unit. Pythagoras likened the universe to the family, declaring that as the supreme fire of the universe was in the midst of its heavenly bodies, so by analogy, the supreme fire of the world was upon its hearthstones. The Pythagorean and other schools of philosophy conceived that one divine nature of God to manifest itself in a threefold aspect of father, mother, and child. These three constituted the divine family, whose dwelling place is creation, and whose natural and peculiar symbol is the 47th problem of the Euclid. God the Father is spirit, God the Mother is matter, and God the child. The product of the two represents the sum of living things born out of constituting nature. That's pause. That's important. Make this make sense. Okay? It doesn't matter the order, in my opinion. But we look at the all from esoteric. It's all, it's everything. It's this pen is God because it is of God. It's an image, it's a creation. It's a thought form of. So the Father being spirit, the Mother being matter, us, the children, God. When you put 2 to 2 together, here we go. Just saying. It's pretty damn accurate. The seed of spirit is sown in the womb of matter. And by an immaculate pure conception, the progeny is brought into being. It is not this the true mystery of the Madonna holding the holy babe in her arms? Who dares to say that such symbolism is improper? Sadly, it's the wrong color and race. The mystery of life is a supreme mystery revealed in all of its divine dignity and glorified as nature's perfect achievement by the initiated sages and seers of all ages. The prudery of today, however, declares that some mystery to be unfit for the consideration of holy-minded people, contrary to the dictates of reason. A standard has been established which affirms that innocence bred of ignorance is more to be desired than virtue born of knowledge. Eventually, however, man will learn that he need never be ashamed of truth. Until he does learn this, he is false to his God, to his world, and to himself. In this respect, Christianity has woefully failed in its mission. While declaring man's body to be the living temple of the living God, in the same breath, it asserts that the substances and functions of this temple to be unclean. And their study defiling to the sensitive sentiments of the righteous. By this unwholesome attitude, man's body, the house of God, is degraded and defamed. Yet the cross itself is the oldest of phallic emblems, and the lozenge-shaped windows of cathedrals are proof that the Ionic symbols have survived the destruction of the pagan mysteries. The very structure of the church itself is permeated with phallicism. Removed from the Christian church of all emblems of peripic origin, and nothing is left, for even the earth upon which it stands was, because of its fertility, the first Ionic symbol. As the presence of these emblems of the generative process is either unknown or unheeded by the majority, the irony of the situation is not generally appreciated. Only those conversant with the secret language of antiquity are capable of understanding the divine significance of these emblems. Flowers were chosen as symbols for many reasons. The great variety of flora made it possible to find some plant or flower which would be suitable figure for nearly any abstract quality or condition. A plant might be chosen because of some myth connected with its origin, as the stories of Daphne and Narcissus, because of the peculiar environment in which it thrived, as the orchard, and the fungus, because of its significant shape, as the passion flower and the Easter lily, because of its brilliance or fragrance, as the verbena and the sweet lavender, because it's preserved its form indefinitely as the everlasting flower, because of unusual characteristics as the sunflower and heliotrope, which have long been sacred because of their affinity for the sun. The plant might also be considered worthy of veneration because from its crushed leaves, petals, stalks, or roots could be extracted healing unconscious essence or drug affecting the nature and intelligence of human beings, such as the poppy and the ancient herbs of prophecy. The plant might also be regarded as efficacious in the cure of many diseases because its fruit, leaves, petals, or roots bore a resemblance in shape or color to parts or organs of the human body. For example, the distilled juices of certain species of ferns, also the hairy moss growing upon oaks, and the thistle down were said to have the power of growing hair. The dentura, which resembles a tooth in shape, was said to cure the toothache, and the Palma Christi plant, because of its shape, cured all afflictions of the hands. The blossom is really the reproductive system of the plant and is therefore singularly appropriate as a symbol of sexual purity, an absolute requirement of the ancient mysteries. This flower signifies the ideal of beauty and regeneration, which must ultimately take the place of lust and degeneracy. Of all symbolic flowers, the lotus blossom of India and Egypt and the rose of the Rosicrucians are the most important. In their symbolism, these two flowers are considered identical. The esoteric doctrines for which the Eastern lotus stands have been perpetuated in modern Europe under the form of the rose. The rose and the lotus are Ionic emblems, signifying primarily the maternal creative mystery, while the Easter lily is considered to be phallic. The Brahmin and Egyptian initiates, who undoubtedly understood the secret systems of spiritual culture whereby the latent centers of cosmic energy in man may be stimulated, employed the lotus blossoms to represent the spinning vortices of spiritual energy located at various points along the spinal column and called chakras, or whirling wheels by the Hindus. 7 of these chakras are of prime importance and have their individual correspondence in the nerve ganglia and plexus. According to the secret schools, the sacral ganglion is called the 4-petaled lotus, the prostatic plexus, the 6-petaled lotus, the epigastric plexus and navel, the 10-petal lotus, the cardiac plexus, the 12-petal lotus, the I can never get this word out, the pharynx, the pharyngeal, you see, can't get it out, plexus, the 16-petal lotus, the carnivorous plexus, the 2-petal lotus, and the pineal gland, or adjacent unknown center, the 1,000-petal lotus. The color, size, and number of petals upon the lotus are the keys to its symbolic importance. A hint concerning the unfoldment of spiritual understanding, according to the secret science of the mysteries, is found in the story of Aaron's rod that budded, and also in Wagner's great opera, Tannhauser, where the budding staff of the Pope signifies unfolding blossoms upon the sacred rod of the mysteries, the spinal column. The Rosicrucians used a garland of roses to signify the same spiritual vortices, which are referred to in the Bible as the 7 lamps of the candlestick, and the 7 churches of Asia. In the 1642 edition of Sir Francis Bacon's History of Henry VII is a frontispiece showing Lord Bacon with Rosicrucian rose for shoe buckles. That's interesting. In the Hindu system of philosophy, each
One moment. I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Bye. Pause. I'm gonna pause literally. But did you hear that? That was our friend AI that I just spoke about in my last video. Go check that one out, because that pisses me off. That I didn't say anything for that to warrant to go off. And as much as I try to shut this damn AI bullshit off, it just keeps coming up and go, woohoo, hi. I didn't get that. Could you repeat? No, bitch, stop listening to me, asshole. So I do apologize for that, but I've been trying. I can't get this little cunt off my damn shit. And if anybody's offended by my sailor mouth, I have a sailor mouth. Sorry. Not sorry, but that's just me. Let's try that again. In the Hindu system of philosophy, each petal of the lotus bears a certain symbol, which gives an added clue to the meaning of the flower. The Orientals also use the lotus plant to signify the growth of man through the 3 periods of human consciousness: ignorance, endeavor, and understanding. As the lotus exists in 3 elements, earth, water, and air, so man lives in 3 worlds: material, intellectual, and spiritual. As the plant with its roots in the mud and the slime grows upward through the water and finally blossoms forth in the light and air, so the spiritual growth of man is upward from the darkness of base action and desire into the light of truth and understanding. The water serving as a symbol of the ever-changing world of illusion through which the soul must pass in its struggle to reach the state of spiritual illumination. The rose and its Eastern equivalent, the lotus, like all beautiful flowers, represent spiritual unfoldment and obtainment. Hence, the Eastern deities are often shown seated upon the open petals of a lotus blossom. The lotus was also a universal motif in Egypt art and architecture. The roofs of many temples were upheld by lotus columns, signifying the eternal wisdom, and the lotus-headed scepter, symbolic of self-unfoldment and divine prerogative, was often carried in religious processions. When the flower had 9 petals, it was symbolic of man when 12 of the universe and the gods, when 7 of the planets and the law, when 5 of the senses and the mysteries, and when 3 of the chief deities of the worlds. The heraldic rose of the Middle Ages generally has either 5 or 10 petals, thereby showing its relationship to the spiritual mystery of man through the Pythagorean pentad and decad. Interesting. Cultus arborum. Might have gotten that one right. The worship of trees as proxies of divinity was prevalent throughout the ancient world. Temples were often built in the heart of sacred groves, and nocturnal ceremonies were conducted under the widespread branches of great trees, fantastically decorated and festooned in honor of their patron deities. In many instances, the trees themselves were believed to possess the attributes of divine power and intelligence, and therefore supplications were often addressed to them. The beauty, dignity, massiveness, and strength of oaks, elms, and cedars led to their adoption as symbols of power, integrity, permanence, virility, and divine protection. Several ancient peoples, notably the Hindus and Scandinavians, regarded the macrocosms or grand universe as a divine tree growing from a single seed sown in space. Yggdrasil being one of them. The Greeks, Persians, Chaldeans, and Japanese have legends describing the axle tree or reed upon which the earth revolves. Kepler declares the universe to be the eternal tree, Brahma, which springs from an imperishable and intangible seed, the material monad. The medieval Kabbalists represented creation as a tree with its roots in the reality of spirit and its branches in the illusion of tangible evidence. The Sitharothic tree of the Kabbalah was therefore inverted with its roots in heaven and its branches upon the earth. Madame Blavatsky, my lady, notes that the Great Pyramid was considered to be a symbol of this inverted tree, with its root at the apex of the pyramid and its branches diverging in 4 streams towards the base. The Scandinavian world tree Yggdrasil supports on its branches 9 spheres or worlds, which the Egyptians symbolized by the 9 stamens of the persa or avocado. All of these are enclosed within the mystery's 10th sphere or cosmic egg, the definitionless cipher of the mysteries. The Kabbalistic tree of the Jews also consists of 9 branches or worlds emanating from the first cause or crown, which surrounds its emanations as the shell surrounds the egg. The single source of life and the endless diversity of its expression has a perfect analogy in the structure of the tree. The trunk represents the single origin of all diversity, the roots deeply embedded in the dark earth, or symbolic of divine nutriment, and its multiplicity of branches spreading from the central tree trunk represents the infinity of universal effects dependent upon a single cause. Why? Pause. Why I describe soul families and tribes as a tree. The tree has also been accepted as symbolic of the microcosm that is man. According to the esoteric doctrine, man first exists potentially within the body of the world tree and later blossoms forth into objective manifestation upon its branches. According to an early Greek mystery myth, the god Zeus fabricated the 3rd race of man from ash trees. The serpent so often shown wound around the trunk of the tree usually signifies the mind, the power of thought, and the eternal temper or urge, which leads all rational creatures to the ultimate discovery of reality and thus overthrows the rule of the gods. Plural. The serpent hidden in the foliage of the universal tree represents the cosmic mind, and in the human tree, the individualized intellect. The concept that all life originates from seeds caused grain and various plants to be accepted as emblematic of the human spermatozoa, and the tree was therefore symbolic of organized life, unfolding from its primitive germ. The growth of the universe from its primitive seed may be likened to the growth of the mighty oak from the tiny acorn. While the tree is apparently much greater than its own source, nevertheless, that source contains potentially every branch, twig, and leaf, which will later be objectively unfolded by the process of growth. Men's veneration for trees as symbols of the abstract qualities of wisdom and integrity also lead him to designate as trees those individuals who possess these divine qualities to an apparently superhuman degree. Highly illumined philosophers and priests were therefore often referred to as trees or treemen. For example, the Druids, whose name, according to one interpretation, signifies men of the oak trees, or the initiates of certain Syrian mysteries, who were called cedars. In fact, it is far more credible and probable that the famous cedars of Lebanon, cut down for the building of King Solomon's temple, were really illumined initiated sages. The mystic knows that the true support of God's glorious house was not the logs subject to decay, but the immortal and imperishable intellects of the tree hierophants. Trees are repeatedly mentioned in the Old and New Testaments and in the scriptures of various pagan nations. The tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil mentioned in Genesis, the burning bush in which the angel appeared to Moses, the famous vine and fig tree of the New Testament, the grove of olives in the garden of, I can never get this name out, Jessamine, where Jesus went to pray, and the miraculous tree of Revelation, which bore 12 manners of fruit, whose leaves were for the healing of the nations. All bear witness to the esteem in which trees were held by the scribes of Holy Writ. Buddha received his illumination while under the Bodhi tree near Madras in India, and several of the Eastern gods are pictured sitting in meditation beneath the spreading branches of a mighty tree. Many of the great sages and saviors carried wands, rods, or staves cut from the wood of sacred trees, as the rod of Moses and Aaron. Gungnir, the spear of Odin, cut from the tree of life, and the consecrated rod of Hermes, around which fighting serpents entwined themselves. The numerous uses which the ancients made of the tree and its products are factors in its symbolism. Its worship was, to a certain degree, based upon its usefulness. Of this, J.P. Lundy writes, quote, "Trees occupy such an important place in the economy of nature by way of attracting and retaining moisture and shading the water sources in the soil so as to prevent bareness and desolation. They are so useful to men for shade, for fruit, for medicine, for fuel, for building houses and ships, for furniture, for almost every department of life, that it is no wonder that some of the more conspicuous ones, such as the oak, the pine, the palm, and the sycamore, have been made secret and used for worship." End quote. The early fathers of the church sometimes used the tree to symbolize Christ. They believed that ultimately Christianity would grow up like a mighty oak and overshadow all other faiths of mankind. Because its annual discards its foliage, the tree also looked upon as an appropriate emblem of resurrection and reincarnation. For though apparently dying each fall, it blossomed forth again with renewed vigor each ensuing spring. Under the appellations of the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil is concealed the great acorn of antiquity, the mystery of the equilibrium. The tree of life represents the spiritual point of balance, the secret of immortality. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, as its name implies, represents polarity or unbalance, the secret of mortality. The Kabbalists reveal this by assigning the central column of the Sephirothic diagram to the tree of life and the two side branches to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Unbalanced forces perish in the void, declares the secret work, and all is made known. The apple represents the knowledge of the procreative processes by the awakening which the material universe was established. The allegory of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is a cosmic myth, revealing the methods of universal and individual establishment. The literal story, accepted for so many centuries by an unthinking world, is preposterous, but the creative mystery of which it is the symbol is one of nature's profoundest verities. The Orpheites, serpent worshippers, reserve the Adamic snake because it was the cause of individual existence. Through humanity is still wandering in a world of good and evil, it will ultimately obtain completion and eat of the fruit of the tree of life, growing in the midst of the illusionary garden of worldly things. This, the tree of life, is also the appointed symbol of the mysteries. By partaking of its fruit, man obtains immortality. The oak, the pine, the ash, the cypress, and the palm are the 5 trees of the greatest symbolic importance. The Father God of the mysteries was often worshipped under the form of an oak. The Savior God, frequently the world martyr, in form of a pine. The world axis and the divine nature in humanity in the form of an ash. The goddesses or maternal principle in the form of a cypress, and the positive pole of generation in the form of the inflorescence of the male date palm. The pine cone is a phallic symbol of remote antiquity. The thyrus of Bacchus, a long wand or staff surmounted by a pine cone or cluster of grapes and entwined with ivy or grapevine leaves, sometimes ribbons, signifies the wonders of nature may only be accomplished by the aid of solar virility, as symbolized by the cone or grapes. In the I can never get this word out. Phrygian mysteries, Attis, the ever-present sun savior, dies under the branches of the pine tree, an allusion to the solar globe at the winter solstice, for the reason the pine tree was sacred to his cult. This tree was also sacred in the mysteries of Dionysus and Apollo. Among the ancient Egyptians and Jews, the acacia or tamarisk was held in the highest religious esteem, and among modern Masons, branches of acacia, cypress, cedar, or evergreen are still regarded as most significant emblems. The shittim wood, I probably just not butchered that, but it's literally shittim, used by the children of Israel in the construction of the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant, was a species of acacia. In describing this tree, Albert Pike has written, quote, "The genuine acacia also in the thorny tamarisk, the same tree which grew around the body of Osiris. It was a sacred tree among the Arabs, who made it the idol of Al-Uzza, which Muhammad destroyed. It is abundant as a bush in the desert of Thu, and of its crown of thorns was composed, which was set on the forehead of Jesus of Nazareth. It is a fit type of immortality and account of its tenacity of life, for it has been known, when planted as a doorpost, to take root again and shoot up and out budding boughs about the threshold." End quote. It is quite possible that much of the veneration accorded to the acacia is due to the peculiar attributes of the mimosa, or sensitive plant, which it was often identified by the ancients. There is a Coptic legend to the effect that the sensitive plant was the first of all trees or shrubs to worship Christ. The rapid growth of the acacia and its beauty have also caused it to be regarded as emblematic of fecundity and generation. The symbolism of the acacia is susceptible of 4 distinct predictions. 1, it is the emblem of the vernal equinox, the annual resurrection of the solar deity. 2, under the form of the sensitive plant which shrinks from human touch. The acacia signifies purity and innocence, as one of the Greek meanings of its name implies. 3, its fitting typifies human immortality and regeneration, and under the form of the evergreen represents the immortal part of man, which survives the destruction of his visible nature. 4, it is the ancient and revered emblem of the mysteries, and candidates entering the tortuous pathways in which the ceremonials were given carried in their hand branches of these sacred plants or small clusters of sanctified flowers. Albert G. Mackey calls attention to the fact that each of the ancient mysteries had its own peculiar plant, sacred to the gods or goddesses, in whose honor the rituals were celebrated. These sacred plants were later adopted as symbols of the various degrees in which they were used. Thus, the mysteries of Adonis, lettuce was sacred. In the Brahmin and Egyptian rites, the lotus. Among the Druids, the mistletoe, and among certain of the Greek mysteries, the myrtle. As a legend of I can't get it out right now, Abiff, is based upon the ancient Egyptian mystery ritual of the murder and resurrection of Osiris. It is natural that the sprig of acacia should be preserved as a symbolic of the resurrection of Harim. The chest containing the body of Osiris was washed ashore near Byblos, and lodged in the roots of a tamarisk or acacia, which growing into a mighty tree enclosed within its trunk the body of the murdered god. This is undoubtedly the origin of the story that a sprig of acacia marks the grave of Harim. The mystery of the evergreen marking the grave of the dead sun god is perpetuated in the Christmas tree. The apricot and quince are familiar Yonic symbols, while the bunch of grapes and the fig are phallic. The pomegranate is the mystic fruit of the Ecclesian rites. By eating it, Proserpine bound herself in the realms of Pluto. The fruit here signifies a sensuous life, which, once tasted, temporarily deprives man of immortality. Also, on account of its vast number of seeds, the pomegranate was often employed to represent natural fecundity. For the same reason, Jacob Bryant in his ancient mythology notes that the ancients recognized in this fruit an appropriate emblem of the Ark of the Deluge, which contained the seeds of a new human race. Among the ancient mysteries, the pomegranate was also considered to be a divine symbol of such peculiar significance that its true explanation could not be divulged. It was termed by the Cabri the forbidden secret. Many Greek gods and goddesses are depicted holding the fruit or flower of the pomegranate in their hands, evidently to signify that they are givers of life and plenty. Pomegranate capitals were placed upon the pillars of Yakin and Boaz, standing in front of King Solomon's temple. And by the order of Jehovah, pomegranate blossoms were embroidered upon the bottom of the high priest's ephod. Strong wine made from the juice of the grape was looked upon as symbolic of the false life and false light of the universe, for it was produced by a false process, artificial fermentation. The rational faculties are clouded by strong drink and animal nature, liberated from bondage, controls the individual. Facts which necessarily were of the greatest spiritual significance, as the lower nature is the eternal temper seeking to lead men into excesses which inhabit the spiritual faculties. The grape and its product were used to symbolize the adversary. Well, now drink of his blood, eat of his flesh. Woo, that's not chill. Lucifer. They're Lucifer, not the. Anywho, the juice of the grape was thought by the Egyptians to resemble human blood more closely than it did any other substance. Oh boy, I can go off on a tangent right now, but I won't. In fact, they believe that the grape secured its life from the blood of the dead who had been buried in the earth. According to Plutarch, quote, the priests of the sun at Heliopos never carry any wine into their temples, and if they made use of any of it at any time in their libations to the gods, it was not because they looked upon it as in its own nature acceptable to them, but they poured it upon their altars as blood of those enemies who formerly had fought against them. Pouring for the homies. For they looked upon the vine to have first sprung out of the earth after it was fattened with the carcasses of those who fell in the wars against the gods. And this, say they, is the reason why drinking its juice in great quantities makes men and beside themselves, filling them as it were with the blood of their own ancestors. There's so much I want to say, and I can't go into it because it takes a long time. Holy. Great Lakes, Great Lakes, Great Lakes, Great Lakes, Great Lakes, Great Lakes, New York, upstate New York. Anywho, among some cults, the state of intoxication was viewed as a condition somewhat akin to ecstasy, when the individual was believed to be possessed by the universal spirit of life, whose chosen vehicle was the vine. In the mysteries, the grape was often used to symbolize lust and debauchery. Because of its demoralizing effect upon the emotional nature, the fact was recognized, however, that the fermentation was the certain evidence of the presence of a solar fire. Hence, the grape was accepted as the proper symbol of the solar spirit, the giver of divine enthusiasm. In a somewhat similar manner, Christians have accepted wine as the emblem of the blood of Christ, partaking of it in Holy Communion. Christ, the exoteric emblem of the solar spirit, said, I am the vine. He was therefore worshipped with the wine of ecstasy in the same manner as were his pagan prototypes, Bacchus, Dionysus, Attis, and Adonis. The mandragora, or Officiorum, or mandrake, is accredited with possessing the most remarkable magical powers. Its narcotic properties were recognized by the Greeks, who employ it to the deadened pain during surgical operations. And it has been identified as with Baris, the mystic herb used by the Jews for casting out demons. In the Jewish wars, Josephus describes a method of securing the baras, which he declares emits flashes of lightning and destroys all who seek to touch it, unless they proceed according to the certain rules supposedly formulated by King Solomon himself. The occult properties of mandrake, while little understood, have been responsible for the adoption of the plant as a talisman capable of increasing the value or quantity of anything which it was associated. As a phallic charm, the mandrake was considered to be an infallible cure for sterility. It was one of the Parapic symbols which the Knights of Templars were accused of worshiping. The root of the plant closely resembles a human body and often bore the outlines of human head, arms, or legs. The striking similarity between the body of man and the mandragora is one of the puzzles of nature, science, and its real basis for the veneration in which the plant was held. In Isis Unveiled, Madame Blavatsky notes that the mandragora seems to occupy upon earth the point where the vegetable and the animal kingdoms meet, as the zoophytes and polypi do in the sea. This thought opens a vast field of speculation concerning the nature of this animal plant. According to a popular superstition, the mandrake shrink from being touched and crying out with a human voice, clung desperately to the soil in which it was embedded. Anyone who heard its cry while plucking it either immediately died or went mad. To circumvent this tragedy, it was customary to dig around the root of the mandrake until the plant was thoroughly loosened, and then to tie one end of a cord about the stalk and fasten the other end to a dog. The dog, obeying his master's call, thereupon dragged the root from the earth and became the victim of the Majorga curse. When once uprooted, the plant could be handled with immunity. During the Middle Ages, mandrake charms brought great prices in art was evolved, by which the resemblance between the mandragora root and the human body was considerably accentuated. Like most superstitions, the belief of the peculiar powers of the mandrake was founded upon an ancient secret doctrine concerning the true nature of the plant. Quote, "It is slightly narcotic," end quote, says Officius Levi. An aphrodisiacal virtue was ascribed to it by the ancients, who represented it as being sought by these Thessalian sorcerers, again, I'm butchering shit, for the composition of phyltres. It is this root emblem. It is the root, the umbilical vestige of our terrestrial origin, as a certain magical mysticism has suggested. We dare not affirm it seriously, but it is true of all the same that man issued from the slime of earth, and the first appearance must have been in the form of a rough sketch. The analogies of nature compel us to admit the notion, at least as a possibility. The first men were, in the case, a family of gigantic, sensitive mandragores, animated by the sun, who rooted themselves up from the earth. Depends what. If you read Ashiana and talk about the angelics materializing into human bodies, and then the bipedal apes and all of that stuff, whose history is it? The homely onion was revered by the Egyptians as a symbol of the universe because its rings and layers represented a concentric planes into which creation was divided according to the Hermetic mysteries. It was also regarded as possessing great medicinal virtue. Because of peculiar properties resulting from its poignancy, the garlic plant was as powerful agent in transcendental magic. To this day, no better medium has been found for the treatment of obsession, vampirism, and certain forms of insanity, especially those resulting from mediumship, and the influences of elemental larvae. Respond immediately to the use of garlic. Oh, too bad. I love my garlic bread. In the Middle Ages, its presence in a house was believed to ward off evil powers. Trifoliate plants, such as the shamrock, were employed by many religious cults to represent the principle of the Trinity. St. Patrick is supposed to have used the shamrock to illustrate this doctrine of the triune divinity. The reason for the additional sanctity conferred by fourth leaf is that the fourth principle of the Trinity is man, and the presence of this leaf, therefore, signifies the redemption of humanity. Wreaths were worn during initiation into the mysteries, and the reading of the sacred books to signify these processes were consecrated to the deities. On the symbolism of wreaths, Richard Payne Knight writes, instead of beads, wreaths of foliage, generally of laurel, olive, myrtle, ivy, or oak, appear upon coins, sometimes encircling the symbolic figures, and sometimes as chaplets upon their heads. All these were sacred to some peculiar personifications of the deity and significant of some peculiar attributes. And in general, all evergreens were Dionysic, planes that in symbols of generative power signifying perpetuity of youth and vigor, as the circles of beads and diadems signify perpetuity of existence. See symbolic language of ancient art and mythology. And that ends that section of our fun of trees and flowers and plants and fruits. They didn't really. If anybody else got the ding, 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 ding of wine, an upstate New York reference, write it in the comments. I think reading Manly P. Holt is extremely important. A lot of people like, oh, he's a Mason, and doesn't matter. This is where you're getting your knowledge. This is why you're understanding why these people did what they did. When you can understand their perception of how things around this universe works, it's quite interesting. And going down to the nitty-gritty of trees and fruits and why people use all these symbols is really important. Really important. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I am sorry I butchered a lot of stuff today. Not my intention to do so. I need to hit the lottery in order to get my teeth fixed without going back into the poorhouse. Yay! So, in the meantime, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I might experiment with something really kind of different, but something I've always been doing for a long time. Keep an eye out for me going live, because I have some ghost hunting. I love that stuff. And I'm a mental medium. So I draw a lot of things to me, just what it is. And I'm not going to haunted locations or doing any of that, but I want to do some experiments, and I'm going to do them live with you guys, and maybe with some oracle cards, which I am tending to get back to. Trying to figure a different camera system out, because obviously this is too small for all the cards that I use. So, well, I have to figure it out, but in the meantime, stay tuned to that. It's going to come out organically. I'm just going to go live one day, and if you pop in to say hi, great. If not, it's okay. Otherwise, wishing everybody an amazing week. Please be safe, be seen. I'm sending each and every one of you protection, light, love, and shielding. Giving all of you positive energy to get through this week. And as always, be safe, be seen. Guard yourself. Until next time, guys. Hope you have a great one.